So this is like a really important thing that's like kind of hard to understand. Like there's like a two-part thing to this in regards to bonds. So like bonds could be several things within certain contexts. Like for example, a bond could be like a type of insurance that is issued, or like you have to get this bond to protect the consumer really, and the regulatory body sort of like requires this bond to be issued. In the case of like some type of lawsuit, really is what you have to be concerned about. But in this particular context, a bond is like this thing which basically represents like money that's borrowed from the bank. Uh, so like if there's a bond payable that you see on a journal entry, then it basically means that money was borrowed from the bank. And then if there's a note receivable, it most likely means that money was lended out, and that's money that is supposed to be collected. Okay? But most of the time you're gonna see a bond payable because like most companies are gonna be borrowing money from the bank rather than lending money. And this bond is basically like this thing which um, is, I mean, it's gonna be like borrowing or like lending money, pretty much, is what bond is um, in this context. But so let's just really quickly go through like this important stuff about this bond, right? This important thing is called face value times rate times time interest, because they're letting you borrow this bond, or like they're letting you borrow this money. Well, not, there could be like, oh yeah, low interest, stuff like that. But it's really to make money off of the borrowed money. Like they're expecting you to pay that money back with interest. Right? So like it's really straightforward. There's a contract rate, like the rate in which the interest, like how much of the face value you have to pay back in interest. Okay. So let's say that a company, okay, took out $100,000 bond. Okay, so that's the face value. And then let's say, well, the contract rate, right, the rate, 6%. Okay. And the time, let's say it's a 45-day bond. Okay. So like this is quite simple, how to calculate interest on this bond. Because to understand like what interest is, you guys can look it up. Let's assume 360 days. Okay? It might be different. You guys have to see like what the assumption is. And like when you guys write in the journal entry, whether it's like semi-annual, a lot of times this stuff is gonna be semi-annual. 6 times 1,000. $75. So at the end of 45 days, when the bond matures, okay, the interest that's been accumulated is $75. So the total amount that needs to be paid back is $175,000. So that's the face value plus the interest for 6% contract rate, and this bond is a 45-day bond. Like for example, let's say in fact it's a well, we can still maybe instead of it being a 45-day, maybe it's 180 days, right? So what would the interest be on this, right? 180 divided by 160 times the contract rate times the face value. Oops. 180 divided by 160 times 6% times 100,000. 3,000 would be the interest. Okay, so you can see like that. So then the total amount that would have to be paid, alright, would be $100,000, $100,000, and $3,000. So you can see as like the longer you take to pay this off, the more interest occurs, right? But the interest isn't necessarily like it's not what's it called? It doesn't like accumulate. It doesn't gosh, what is it? Like they're not going to change the principal, as in like change the face value of it throughout the 180 days, right? So like there's a word for it. I kind of forgot what it is. Compound. This isn't compound interest. Like for example, for compound interest, let's say like every single day this bond occurs interest. So like every single day, this bond, the face value of principal of this bond goes up. So like after the first day, the interest has occurred, and it's compounded. So like now it's the principal is now like, how much would that be? What would you say? It will go up $16 every single day. After the first day, pretty much with the face value over the principal became 1,000. It went up $16. You owe $16 on the very first day, right? It's not like that per se. It's not compounding, because if it was compounding, the next day, the value of it, the value of the principal has changed. Now it's $116. So then like now the interest isn't going to be the same throughout every single day up to 180 days. In fact, because the interest is compounding, the face value or the principal increases every single day. So like if it was like that, it would be a lot more, like how much you would have to pay. Okay. So it's not compound interest. It's just like the interest from like the day that it was taken out or issued till the day of like it being paid, and no additional like that interest doesn't go back into the face value. It's just like whatever the face value was at the time is like the interest that you'll pay at the end of the bond. If that makes any sense. At the end of at maturity, when the bond matures and when the bond is paid. But there's something you guys should note, which is like this thing which makes it a little more complicated. Which is like this thing called the market rate. And this is the thing that makes it a little more complicated. Okay? The market rate. So like, let's say the market rate is 8%. So like, The thing about these bonds is that it doesn't happen inside a vacuum. As in, well, for example, a good example is like stocks issued at par. Like, because these companies would have to issue this stock at par. So like they would have to create some kind of par value. SEC regulations, things like that, they have to kind of create like an NSRP for this. But like once they release it into the market rate, the market sort of dictates like, oh, in fact, like, this is actually going to be sold over par. Okay, that makes any sense. I know it like sometimes you'd be like, why? But like it has to do with supply and demand, whether or not they're doing this on purpose or not. Carefully controlling supply, right, to keep the value of it high. But let's just say that the market rate is 8%. So like what that means is when it comes to a bond, is that when the contract rate, here, let me try to find and this is a very important thing, like this is a very important thing to understand. Where is it? Jeez. Well, when the contract rate is less than the market rate, well, you guys might have to memorize this. It's that important to memorize. When the contract rate is less than the market rate, it's going to be issued at a discount. Okay, so like when this bond sells at a discount, it's when the market rate is more than the contract rate. I know it's like hard to understand. It's like, what does that mean, right? It's like, why would the market rate, like when the market rate is high, so like for example, you guys can look at this here, right? Like this is 8%. Right, so like if this was 8%, you can see like interest would be 1,000. If it was 180 days, it's 4,000. Right. So like, and like, pretty much, it's the contract. It's being sold over par, as in like this is the contract rate, but the market rate is higher. So then like this bond, I'm not sure exactly. Like they might like resell this bond to the market, and like the market is saying like, oh, like 6% interest at the contract, like this debt, this $300,000 debt, like 6% is a really good low number for that, and it can be resold at a higher rate at 8%. And because like maybe the debt is like a sure thing, like there's not a lot of chances of this debt not being paid. uh, you know, like this debt won't be like um, not paid. You know, it will be paid. So like because of that, they are willing to pretty much pay like they're willing to take someone in the market is willing to take this bond and accept a higher rate um, of it. I mean, I don't know like exactly how this works either. To be honest with you guys, I don't know. This is like fancy stuff. Like I don't exactly understand. Like you know, and I could be wrong here. Um, but I'm gonna just finish this video. I'll look it up later, see if this is correct or not. But pretty much. The market rate. Well, you would want to start with interest payment. So let's just do this. Interest payment, the face value times the contract rate. Okay. So we'll calculate the interest payment first. Okay. So the interest payment, interest equals the face value of the bond, 100,000 times contract rate at 6% times the number of days. So let's say it's a 45-day bond. Okay. So the interest payment will be $750. Okay. So now what we can do is calculate the total cash flow at maturity. So like the cash flow equals the face value plus the interest, which is 750. So the cash flow would be 175,000. Okay. And then you can calculate the market rate per period. So like the period is the market rate times 45 days divided by 260. Okay. So the market rate is 6%. So 6% times 45 through 60. Alright. 6 times 45 divided by 360 times 26. So it would be 0.75%. That's the period rate. And then you can issue the price. Issue price equals the total cash flow. 175,000 divided by 1 plus the period rate, which is 0.75, or like 0.0075. So then that would be 750 divided by 1.0075. 150 divided by 1.0075. It's been issued at 100,000. The issue price is 100,000. So there is no discount. It's odd. That can't be right. Oh, sorry. The period rate, that's the market rate, this is the contract rate. So she's 0.1 or 1%. Under 1747. And 5. Alright, it's 1 years old. So you see, there is a discount on the bond. Pretty much. So what is the discount? The discount is face value minus the issue price. Discount equals face value 100,000 minus the issue price $99. 99,752.848. So discount is 247.5. So now that we know this, how would we write this into the journal entry? All right. Pretty much, let's say January 1st, year 1. Sorry, so like, gosh, okay. So the cash that was received, because this is the journal entry for the company that has borrowed this money. So they would receive $99,752.48 as cash. Pretty much. And like we can flip it around, and like in the next video I'll like talk about what if it's a premium. Discount on bonds payable, $247.50. Bonds payable, 100,000. Okay. So like after 45 days, which would be on February 15th, okay, when the bonds mature, and like now that these bonds have matured, these bonds would have to be repaid, pretty much. The bonds payable, discount on bonds payable. When there will be amortization as well. Let's just try to write this tranche real quick. So like you can see, like the discount on bonds payable and then the bonds payable. The bonds payable eventually would have to get paid off. Bonds payable. And it matures. 1,000. And then cash. To pay that 1,000. Yep. Well, the bond interest expense 7.52, and then the discount on bonds payable 247.52, and then bonds payable to close out the bonds payable 300,000, and then cash 300,000. So like if the bonds were issued at a discount, does that mean they receive less money, less cash? What's this? If the bonds were issued at a discount, the interest generates face value from the total issue. Okay. Well, discount on bonds payable. Discount on payable. Well, I suppose you will also have to pay the interest on the bond as well. So like the interest payment cash, so like it was still be 750. You can see. Um, so like it's kind of hard to understand. Like when you think of a discount, you think like you're getting a discount, as in like the comp like you're whenever you think of discount, you're like, oh, I'm getting a discount. Right? So like if you were getting a discount on this bond, you would pretty much be getting more. Or like for example, you'd be like, oh, you get 100,000 in cash, but the bonds payable is only like 999,000, right? So like that would be like kind of like a discount. But like in this particular case, when it's saying like a discount on bonds payable, when like the market rate is higher than the contract rate, what it really means is that the bonds have been issued out at a discount for the issuer. So that means the bank has to lend out less money to get the uh, to get the same face value amount. Because the market is saying that the interest rate should be higher than the 6%. Um, so I don't know like how they figure that out. Like it's some finance stuff. I don't really know about that. Like I'm not really that familiar with it. But pretty much when these are issued at a discount, the receiver of the cash from the bond that they've taken out, like they borrowed money from the bank, they'll be getting less money in cash because like there was a discount on the bond, so the bank has to give out less cash for the same amount um, of the face value. I know it's like hard to understand. Um, but like when the bonds mature, like the bond interest expense will still have to be debited the discount to close out that discount on bonds payable, close out that account. So like the bond interest expense, for example, here, you know, most likely to come out of cash, right? Um, like wherever. Let's do it. Bonds were issued at yeah, okay, so um, they'll still have to pay that discount rate or that discount that discount, but the money that they receive, like they still have to pay like the full bond amount at face value, but they've received less cash and there was a discount on the bonds payable. Okay, so the bond interest expense um, that's going to be like one of the accounts, one of the things that is going to be added to, like the discount on the bond would be credited out of that. The bond interest expense also would be like the actual interest from the face value. You see, so like in fact they would have to pay close to $1,000 rather than like 750 for the interest expense because like these issued bonds were at a discount. I know it's like super confusing. It's hard to understand, but the thing is like at the end of it, and then this bond interest expense, and like they had to pay out extra cash. Like this expense came out of cash. That's the thing. Let's see. And then the bonds payable, right? The bonds payable would still have to be closed out for the full face amount. It's 300,000. That would come out of cash. Okay. So like if it wasn't at a discount for the bank, the issuer of the bond, right? If it was only at 6%, the total amount that would have to be paid, like how much cash would have to come out, right? Well, you know, like it would be like the total, the face value plus the interest expense. So like 100,000, 750. You know, that's how much would have to be repaid if it wasn't at a discount for the bank. But then because there was a discount for the bank, I know it's like so confusing. You have to like put yourself in the shoes of like different sides of it. You can't always like put yourself in the shoes of like the person or like the bank. You have to put yourselves in the shoes. So because it was discounted, there's additional interest expense for the discount. So because of this discount, you have to pay extra like $100,997.52. So you have to pay like $247.52 extra on top of the interest. You guys see? So that's what happens if there was a discount. And like the way that there would be a discount is if the market dictates that the par or like the contract rate should be higher, pretty much. Okay. And like I don't know exactly why. Like I don't know. I can't really talk too much about like the market rate versus the contract rate. Like how maybe like the market buys the bond and it goes to a different holder. Like someone buys the debt, right, or something. I don't really know for sure like how or why like the market rate if it's higher. Like what if they don't sell the debt? Then it's gonna stay at the contract rate. But pretty much at the end of the day, the bondee, like the person who took out this bond, if the market says that the bond interest rate should be higher compared to the contract rate, then in fact they would be paying additional monies for interest on top of the face value that they would have to pay. Super confusing, but sometimes these bonds get issued out at a premium. So the banks issue these out at a premium. So the bondee, the person the company that took out the bond, actually has to pay less money. So it doesn't if the market dictates that this bond can be issued under par, under the contract rate, then the bank issues these bonds out at a premium, as in the company that took out the bondee, can borrow more and repay less. Kind of confusing. I'll make another video in a minute talking about if it is in fact sold at a premium. If there is a premium on this bond, then what happens? Like when the market rate is lower than the contract rate. But this is pretty much the thing about bonds if it's at discount.